My name is Albert A. Michelson. I worked on a project with Edward W. Morley called the Michelson-Morley experiment in the year of 1887. We worked on improving a past experiment that I had previously been working on alone. We were testing theories on how light was able to travel through vacuums that had no medium for which the light wave to travel through. For example, sound waves cannot travel through a vacuum because they require a medium to carry it. In many cases, this medium is air. Waves rippling across a lake could not exist without the water itself to transfer energy. So, we were determined to answer the question of how this is possible. Our project focused on determining the validity of the leading theory that there is some unknown substance called aether all throughout the universe that allows waves of light to travel through vacuums. If we were able to find this aether, we wanted to figure out its strange properties. The theorized aether could not be seen or touched, and there was very little evidence to back up its existence. The only evidence that there was that the idea that light needed a medium to travel through. Therefore, physicists theorized that there must be a substance in the vacuum that we cannot see. If this aether existed, then that would mean that the light beam traveling perpendicular to each other would actually be traveling at different speeds if measured on Earth due to the movement of Earth through the aether. We took a light beam, we split it into two separate beams that were perpendicular to each other, and then recombined the beams to check for constructive or destructive interference. This would then tell us if the waves themselves were changing their speed, because if they came back the same speed, then they would not be traveling through this theorized aether. If they came back and had destructive interference, then that means that there is this aether. At first, we worked on the experiment in the basement of the Adalbert Dormitory at Western Reserve University. The issue with this dormitory was that vibrations from horse carriages and thunderstorms frequently interrupted this experiment, which needed the utmost precision. We were able to conduct this experiment on a heavy piece of sandstone to eliminate some of this air. Now, the reason that the vibrations were interfering with our experiment was the fact that we were diffracting light so that we could figure out its speed and figure out if there was constructive or destructive interference. These vibrations would frequently mess up our calculations, frequently make it hard to find the exact speed of the wave. Around this time we were working on our experiment, there was also Nikola Tesla, who began his experiment with X-rays. Buffalo Bill was gaining wild popularity around the world, and there was also a big fiasco with direct currents or alternating currents. Now, the main reason for this was Thomas Edison wanted people to continue using direct currents so he could continue gaining money from royalties, even though alternating currents were much more promising if these currents were being used by the mass public to get them electricity. The main people involved in this project were myself, Albert Michelson, and a gentleman by the name of Edward Morley. No one else worked in that basement but us. But our findings could not have been possible without the countless hours that our predecessor physicists worked to get us to the point that we were at previous to this experiment. Now, my role in the experiment was equal to that of Edward Morley's, but an important aspect that I brought to the project was the fact that I had my own experiment that I developed very similar to this experiment that Morley and I were using. With this help, though, we were able to make my old experiment much more precise. We were both equals in the experiment, though. Both of us worked tireless hours contributing our thoughts and ideas. Like I said, though, with his help, we were able to find a much more accurate way to measure the difference in the speed of light. Our project was different than most other famous experiments because our experiment was actually a failed experiment. Most other experiments that are famous prove theories correct. Due to this failure, though, we were able to disprove the leading theory that the medium which light traveled through was something called aether. Our experiment later helped Albert Einstein theorize that no matter what the speed of the source emitting the light will always be traveling at the same speed, 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. One problem with this experiment was that we were measuring the difference in the speed of light due to the speed of Earth. But the speed of the Earth is very, very slow compared to the speed of light, so finding this difference proved to be tough. But using the idea that separating the white waves and then bringing them back together could cause interference of some sorts, this would help us measure the difference much more accurately. In fact, this difference could be observed with the eyes and there was no timers or anything needed to measure this. So it made it much more accurate.